Good evening, it's Dr. Alan Yim. In this video, I'm going to be talking about scales and modes. Don't get these two confused. I'm going to be talking about modes in this video in terms of church modes. But modes can also refer to the idea of major and minor. When we talk about chords in just a bit, sometimes we say the major mode and the minor mode. But this idea is actually borrowed from the idea of scales, because chords are really just groups of notes from a scale played at the same time, and they make up the harmony, which will be something I'm going to be talking about in a later video. So getting back to scales, back in the Middle Ages, and even before that with the Greeks, there were many types of scales, and here are just 7 of them. And you can see from the names: Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian, that they are obviously perhaps borrowed from the Greeks. So Ionian refers to a certain type of column, and you can just tell by the look of it that these words, like the word rhythm, are borrowed from the ancient Greece. We don't have a record of what the Greek music sounds like. I think there's just like a couple of bits of music on a broken piece of pottery, but any creation of Greek music is sort of an imagination of what it might sound like. But we do know the scales. So again, in Western music, the Greeks divided up the octave into 12 separate pitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, and then we get back to Do again. These 12 chromatic pitches, we could use them as a scale, the chromatic scale, but it's not particularly useful because, like the whole tone scale we looked at earlier, there's no starting and stopping point. Instead, we have sometimes a bigger space between the notes and sometimes a narrower one. And there are actually, in most of the scales that we use, 7 different pitches from that set of 12. In the Renaissance and Middle Ages, these church modes were all used to write different types of pieces. And you can actually play these different scales on the piano pretty easily. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Composers use these different modes to create different moods. So let's try playing them. How do you do this? Well, you know how to play C major because you start on C and you go to C on all the white keys, and C can be found to the left of the 2 black keys. We're going to see the keyboard in a second. From there, you can play other scales starting on other pitches in the C major scale. So if you start on D, that's going to be Dorian. C, which you now know is C major, is Ionian, E is Phrygian, F is Lydian, G is Mixolydian, and so on. So let's take a look at this. Here's the keyboard. I'm going to mark the notes as I play them. So I'm going to start at the C down here, the low C. So Do, Re, Mi, Fa, So, La, Ti, Do. And that's the C major scale. Let's start on D instead. So we'll go from D to D. And listen to this. This is Dorian. Let's try Phrygian. Okay, Lydian. You might notice that some of these scales sound very similar. For example, Lydian is a major scale, but this note here, if it were major or Ionian, would be B flat. So this note is raised up. Listen to it again. See if you notice it. It sounds almost like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. But it's actually do, re, mi. And then this note is, instead of fa, it's fi. It's raised up. Okay. This next one, I'm going to tell you that this note should be raised up to F sharp. So it's actually lowered when we get here. So it's do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, te, do. Take a listen to this. This is Mixolydian. And now we're going to have natural minor. And our very last one. This one is not used that much because listen to these two notes. Turns out that the fifth note of the scale is really important, and normally it sounds like this. But in this scale, it's lowered, so this one sounds a little bit more dissonant. So listen to Mary Had a Little Lamb in Locrian. Okay, so you can hear it doesn't quite sound anything like Mary Had a Little Lamb. So when I say dissonant, I mean that the notes clash a little bit, maybe to our ears. All right, let me finish with our discussion of scales, just to mention what happened after the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. So starting in about the middle of the Baroque, composers started limiting themselves to just two of these scales, the Ionian, major, and the Aeolian, which is minor. Now the minor does have three variations, so I'll just play them really quickly in C. So we have C natural minor that sounds like this. That's like playing from A to A on the keyboard, but I'm starting on C instead. It also has melodic. So in melodic, the second part of the scale is like major. Like C major. So, and then sounds just like major in the top part, but it has the lowered three. And then harmonic. This one sounds perhaps the most exotic of them. So most composers use harmonic minor when they're writing the harmony. So it allows for certain chords that are very important. But it does have that little exotic part there. Now major, C major, that only has one version. But the amazing thing is, composers gravitated towards major, and they wrote most of the compositions are in major. So especially if you look at a composer like Mozart, he rarely wrote in minor keys in terms of all his works. So when he wrote in minor, it really meant something. It really meant that the piece is dark and sad. So when you hear Mozart writing something like this, he wrote that little piano sonata. I shouldn't say little because it's not little at all, but for him it was very heavy. His mother just passed away, and he wrote this A minor piano sonata. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next video when I talk about harmony.